Hello, listeners, and welcome to this, the 30th episode of the Heresy Accountability Buddies podcast. I'm Jacob, and this episode I'm joined by...
Dan.
Duncan.
Davey.
Jack is with us, but is having a little bit of difficulty communicating that. Wonderful.
John.
And we're glad to have you with us. It's been a little bit, but we're hoping this show to answer a viewer request about how to go about setting up your first event, if you're hosting, that is. But before we get to that, who wants to start us off with hobby progress?
Yeah, so this is John. I didn't get a ton done during the week in Florida for work for Monday through Thursday. No fun times were had in Florida. It was all work.
We saw pictures. We saw pictures. There was some fun, but not probably had by you.
Correct. There was.
It was kind of fun seeing you in your monkey suit. That was kind of nice.
Yeah, I had to dress up, and then I had to get attacked by people to play drunken games and things like that, and then night. But so when I got back home, I decided I really needed to double down on terrain time, so I built a ash waste chop shop. Took a Ridge Runner, kind of propped it up. Took the Orc Mech Boy workshop, de-orcified it, and kind of set that up together. And then built some along the side. Built some junk piles that can work really good as barricades. Posted that up in Jack's request for work in progress shots thing. And then I went through and built. Been building some Cargo 8s, Ridge Haulers. They're these really big Necromunda vehicles. I've got two that I'm building just for the events, and then I've got one that's flipped over on its side that I've kind of turned into a little junk trader guy. And so I've got a little mattress out, and I've got some tents out, and so that way people can go through and kind of use it as a way station as you're going between towns. The biggest problem I'm having with all this terrain for desert stuff is I'm trying to make it boring and deserty without making it boring to play on. So I'm trying to put stuff on there and tell a story with as little parts as I can to keep things together.
From what you've shown us, I mean, it looks incredible. So
yeah, I love what you did with that orc mech station or whatever mech thing right there. That looks really nice, that piece.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. These are like really big bases too, so I can the same ones I use for the Guac Bowl refineries. I'm using those for the bases, and I've got some other stuff to work on tonight while we're talking. I've got a bunch of actual bark, so I can go ahead and build rock formation like that. So my next thing is those can be used at any scale, so they're not just great for Heresy games. They're also going to be good for Titanicus and Necromunda, which is the main use for a lot of this other stuff. Other than that, and I'll come back to this when we talk about running events, because I learned a lot about how not to run events, but it was fun either way. I went to a 2-gun competition today. I got some sun. I got worn out. I got abused, but had a blast running around and practicing my pistol and rifles.
Dude, what happened to your nose?
That is something else we've talked about on the cast. I've got deep core acme.
I thought you might have got hit in the face with a cartridge.
Shell case.
No, I'm very red, if you didn't notice on the face.
Yeah, you definitely got some sun today.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, it was 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Or sorry, 8 a.m. to running around and doing stuff. But yeah, the things I learned about listening to your constituents when they're armed and making sure you've got all the necessary things. What they actually do for this event is it's really nice. They're trying to get more pistol and rifle events going throughout Texas. And the downside is to do that, you need to have certain qualification. And to do that, to get those qualifications, you need to run X events. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. So what they're trying to do is have rotating event hosts with a main event host that's the person that's run it before. So they've got like qualified range officers that are there to make sure everything's safe. And then the person that designs the event is the one that's going to run it this time, but he's taking notes from the guy that ran it last time. So this is a yearly event, and they're going to try to do like quarterly events as well. It's kind of ironically mirroring what Michael and I have been trying to put together in Texas for Heresy. But I'll talk about that when we get to the talking about events later. I will pass it on.
So let's see. I have been working on building my 2,000 point list of Blood Angels. I want to put Adepticon specifically this week. I've been working on Recon Marines. I've got 5 of the Forge World Mark IV Recon Marines, and then I'm putting together 5 Mark VI conversions. I've got bits to make sniper rifles, and then I was trying to figure out a way to do cloak aesthetic. And John actually threw a tip out because I was looking for resin bits and whatnot, and John threw out the the lead foil. And I remember I bought some lead foil because at some point I'm gonna make a bunch of oaths of the moment scrolls for my word bearers when I completely finish them up. It's like the last thing I want to do for them. So I actually took, and I've done one so far, but I really like it. So I cut up the piece of foil and formed it over his shoulder to mirror kind of the way the Forge World ones, and folded it up a bit. And it was, I don't know, 5-10 minutes worth of work. And for that amount of work, it gives the right effect and it's going to look pretty cool. So between them having the sniper rifle conversions on the guns and the Mark 6 guys are going to fit right in with the other one, and I have a cool unit of 10 recon marines to run. I also, and I don't know, this may spoil something else we're going to talk about, but I've been trying to hunt down bits to put together my Ophanim squad, command squad. They released apparently the last I don't know, the last exemplary battle for now,
The last
including Marines.
Astartes.
Last Astartes. Last
Astartes.
Ah.
For now.
So, and it had, who were the other guys? I'm sorry.
Iron Hand, were they
Yeah.
Morlocks?
Iron Hand Morlocks, yeah. And which I don't think were stupendous. They were kind of neat. But then they had the Ophanum squad, which is the not sanguinary guard. Actually, if you know the Blood Angels lore, it's more along the Warden lore, where it's a unit of dudes in black, more black and red, and they do the same thing the Wardens, which were the chaplains, were in Blood Angels, and they go around and they look for things that Blood Angels shouldn't be doing. Always in the background is the gene modification taint, the red, what becomes the red thirst eventually in 40K, but they don't call it that ever. But so I was already digging that when I read about it in the books and looking to do a command squad at some point. So these guys came out as an awesome option for that. They got pretty decent rules, I think, or at least good enough, and cool lore. So I started hunting down bits to put together my Ophanim squad. So I got a buddy printing some shields, and I hunted down some Mark 4, Mark 3, or Mark 4 Blood Angel special heads, and going to use the Sanguinary Guard bodies. I think I'm going to do the winged backpack still, but I'm going to do them up on black. So since they're more black with red, have the black wings on there, I think that'd be pretty cool. So that's kind of what I've been working on. The other thing is my printer's continuing running, and I've been printing this big it's Dragon's Rest, but they have this big giant ground crawler that's similar to the ones John's talking about putting together, but a little different aesthetic, and it's got a trailer bit that goes with it. And so I finally got all the pieces printed for that. So the next thing will be cleaning that all up, putting it all back together, gluing it together. It's got big openings in it, so I'm going to magnetize the tops, and then everything else will just all be glued together and painted up. And I had my alien terrain table at Adepticon last year, and people seem to think it was missing one big more line of sight blocking piece. So I'm going to do this up and try and get some dead like scientists and make it look like some humans came when we're trying to capture some aliens and got mangled and broke out of the trailer, and the trailer sitting there in the middle is a big line of sight blocking piece. So that's just got to be assembled and put together and then primed up and painted, and I'll have one more piece, and that table will be I think much better for it. So that's what I've had going on. So we'll pass it along to the person who made sure that we don't get above 300 in our alphabetical order introductions in the beginning, Jack.
Heyo, so I'm in Kansas right now, so I stopped at the Geekery, which is a local hobby spot that Lucas told me to stop at. Really cool, really great tables. I've been working slowly on an Aqua, was a Scorpius Whirlwind, another Praetor, because apparently 87 isn't enough. Have my Lotaris to basing, and full Mataris is almost done. So working a little bit here, working a little bit there, the normal stuff. Duncan, I saw a picture of stuff you've been working on. What have you been up to?
Blah. Well, let's see here. I put together some Alpha Legion Dreadnoughts, Contemptors. I put together 5 Headhunters and an Alpha Legion Praetor. I've got them base coated in silver after going over them, after getting them all assembled. I got them black coated, and I've got them in the dark silver I'm going to use for their base for right now. I've also got basic color down on a new Praetor for my Sons of Horus, a new Chaplain for my Sons of Horus, Jump Chaplain, to be specific, 10 more Jump Reavers, a Jump Apothecary, another Contemptor for the Sons of Horus. Thank you, Jamie, from our Secret Santa. And I've got 3 more Chieftains that I've got base colors down on as well. And I've been working on shields and backpacks and trying to figure out what red blend I used to do my shoulder pads before, because apparently I can't remember what red I used or how I did it, because I'm a moron and I didn't write that down. So go me for being stupid. Let me see, what else have I done? Oh, I've got 2 more tactical squads half done for the Alpha Legion that I'm doing for Corrin. And today I spent a little bit of time talking to a local who I don't know, who Jack doesn't know, who is getting into heresy. And apparently one of the local gaming groups he's part of reached out and said, hey, I know these guys who are big into heresy, and created a Facebook group with one of their members, he and myself, and I've added Jack to it, to try to talk him into how heresy works, what heresy is. Apparently he's already got a fairly sizable Night Lords army, so it'll be kind of cool. Some of it looks pretty good. I'm looking forward to seeing it on the table. I'm looking forward to meeting up with him. I think he and I are going to try to get together for a Welcome to Heresy, Here's How You Play game here in, not this week, but week after. I got to teach Corrin how to play as well, so I figure I'll teach both of them at the same time. So there we go. That's my week of what I have done. Jamie, what'd you do?
So it's been a little while since I've been on. Had a lot of, as everybody knows, a lot of family stuff going on. But so hobby progress. I finished up my first of many land raiders for my Dark Angels. Posted pictures up on the Facebook site for everybody to gawk at and cut down because it's Dark Angels. Let's see. Got a 3D printer for Christmas, and so I've done some little test prints and started looking at stuff to print. I'm getting ready to run a batch of what do they call them? Hellfire pistols, which are actually Volkite dual hand Volkite for my destroyer squads that I'm getting ready to crank out. I've started work on my inner circle Knight Cenobit what do you call them? Terminators for my Dark Angels. It's the ones that everybody likes with the super killy 2-handed swords and the plasma casters on their wrists. I've got 10 of those I've started painting. It's slow going. They're very, very detail loaded, and I want them to look a lot like my my lion that I did. So a lot of layers and stuff like that. It's just going to be slow going on them. And then currently, as we're recording, I'm taping up a bunch of saber tanks to do the second layer of paint on them. So I've got a lot of irons in the fire, I guess you would say. Who else hasn't gone yet? Jacob, did you go?
I have not gone yet. I did finally get a little bit of hobby in this week. Putting together some BattleTech stuff for another escalation to be going on. Exciting. Otherwise, I, though it's not directly hobby progress related, did get my first, crash course game in with my current, Drop Pod Thousand Suns list. There's a couple things to iron out there, something that I can iron out, some things that I can't. But I'm ultimately hoping to continue to look forward to more of those games. There's a lot that I need to learn about how I am and I'm not playing that army. Just because drop pods are so different from how I used. Yeah. definitely, at least with the way that I've constructed my list, much more of a needing to make sure that I'm putting the right things in the right places and getting them into close combat immediately, rather than necessarily doing some of the shooting that I did in editions past. But obviously, investing in two Charybdis should kind of tipped me that there was going to be that kind of a skew. Did get my first brush with the boogeyman that I was afraid of meeting this edition, also known as interceptor las cannons, and ultimately, I hope that they do not end up being as insurmountable or appearing now, because I just don't know if, what, or how my list would even get around that. To say nothing of the fact that that's a free interceptor, generally speaking, it's a lot. Still a lot to unpack and a lot to work around there, but one step forward. As for handing off, I think that's basically all of us except for Michael, who's joined here later. Michael, glad to have you with us.
It is great to be here.
What's your hobby progress been of late?
I really don't have a whole lot. I've most of what I've been doing is Warzone related, so we're starting to ramp back up to start getting that back into the swing of things. So most of my hobby progress is just laying out terrain, planning tables, trying to get more tables done, and then it's all going to basically be admin work real soon because got to start talking to sponsors and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot to do with that. But
we here at the Accountability Buddies podcast would love to sponsor you, and I will personally send you $1 as long as you can give a shout out to us in the event pack.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned that. For $1, I can absolutely do that. But I pulled out in honor of them, since they're starting to kind of get their stuff back together. Mournival, they're starting to make rules again. So I pulled out my heavy destroyers that I was working on for salamanders, and I started kind of playing with them again. So since I can now fully commit war crimes without my dad getting super upset at me, I've decided that I need salamanders destroyers. So.
I've already covered the donations. I supply
okay, cool.
bunch of golden to the last event, and I will be going forward having more of those and some other secret prizes at future Texas events.
This is true.
You're a Texas hobby hero there, John.
John is a Texas hobby Chad. He always brings forth the dope prize support. So
he's a hobby hero, the sky's in his eyes.
Thank you, Jack.
I mean, he really is. I'm sure everybody knows it, but when John comes to events, it's a huge boon. So I really appreciate it.
There is one thing we actually got our first donations today for a new Toys for Tots on.
Really?
Nice.
A bunch of Mark IV and Mark III Marines. I'm not going to say who did it yet because I'm not sure he was okay with announcing that yet. But and they're like the old Forge-World ones too. So
the good ones.
That's nice. What do you need? Do you need more donations for that army? Or?
I will not turn down anything yet. We haven't announced an army yet. I was going to run a poll or have somebody else run it because of my wonky Facebook account. But I had an idea of running, if we got enough support for it, doing a Sons of Horus and a Sons of Dorn, competing armies. If we got enough people interested in doing it,
I could dig that.
I figure it'd be very easy to get transfers for reason. I mean, it's I don't know.
I've only got like 4 sets sitting here spare.
I was say I have a couple sets I'd donate.
Yeah, I wonder why you would think that. Those aren't really common transfers, are they?
No, not at all.
Interesting.
That or maybe I'll put a poll up and see what else everybody else would look forward to. I think the only one I won't do right now would be Death Guard, just because we've already done.
Yeah, that's something that we're running into. Is we've got to figure out whether we're gonna do Knights this year for sure, but we don't know if it would be better, because we're going to do 3,000 points for the raffle army. We don't know if it would be better to gang them up with like 2 armigers and then split it off into a bunch of packs, or just do like the whole 3,000 points together.
Hey, Jamie, real quick, when's the? I mean, I know you've done multiple Toys for Tots armies, and I know we all truly appreciate it and have appreciated it for years. What armies have you done in the past for Toys for Tots?
It'd probably be easier to say the ones I haven't. So the ones I have done: Space Wolves, Death Guard, Iron Hands, Imperial Fists. Sorry, not Iron Hands. Imperial Fists, Custodes, Night Lords, Blood Angels, Alpha Legion. Ironically, no Dark Angels, if I remember correctly.
I'm not hearing any Ultramarines.
Not hearing Salamanders either.
Okay, so when I used to be in 40K, when I on the Freebooters forum, we did Ultramarines a lot, like for 40K back in like 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Yeah, when you got all those
It's not that
transfers
I
in the
haven't-
kits.
Say again.
When you got all those transfers in the kits.
Yeah. So it's not that I haven't done Ultramarines, but I have not done Ultramarines in 30K.
I'll also say that, like, with this show as a data point, it really doesn't make any sense to do Ultramarines as a Toys for Tots army, because everyone who would already want them already has them. That's why we have so many players.
We also there were some knights that were done, and no, not demons. Not demons. There has been several Realms of Battle boards done as for 30K. So I mean,
I would almost be tempted to say you've done a lot of different ones, and obviously it's the heresy community as a large whole. I'd be kind of interested in seeing something new that hasn't been one of the ones that's been done before, just to prevent saturation of the market, as it were.
Yep.
And to give people who might be interested in something that hasn't been done before something a chance.
So yeah, Dorn would be the only one we have done. So that I was thinking about. I haven't done Sons of Horus yet. Haven't done Emperor's Children, which that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Have you done Salamanders?
Have not done Salamanders and have not done Iron Hands.
Didn't hear Alpha Legion in that list.
No, I have done. I know the Alpha Legion was done because I personally painted like 4,500 points of them in like 2 months. I know all about that for sure. But Ultramarines for 40K. For 40K have been done. Ultramarines for 30K have not. Another thing that hadn't been done would be Sisters of Silence, and then like Solar Ox. But those would be
Militia. If they come
Militia
back.
hadn't been done either. Which I know, John, that's all up your alley right there.
Assuming we get rules at some point in time.
Yeah, that's the thing that's keeping
Well,
me-
and technically demons haven't been, but we don't have rules
Or models.
or model. Well, I mean, you do have model.
Well, they've always been model agnostic, haven't they?
Say again.
Hasn't demons always been model agnostic, except for like Samus, the Ruinstorm Beast, and some stuff like that?
Pretty much.
So they,
I mean,
they
if you-
and
if you-
the brutes.
A lot of the books refer just to the old school, plague bearers,
Yeah,
corn filters, right? I mean, they're a lot of just really going back to the generic
demon.
40K AOS, whatever demon types.
That could be cool too. I mean, I'm up for anything building wise. It's fun for me. But yeah, something that we haven't done before will be all. Sorry.
Well, let me know when you've made a decision as to what army you will be doing. I will be more than happy to chip in either models or time, depending on what it is you're putting your paint into.
Okay, that's cool. I mean, I'm willing to throw in a starter box to start with to get stuff going, and I know we've got Mark IIIs and Mark IVs as well.
Well, if you decide to do Salamanders, let me know. I can throw some Forge World your way, because I've got a ton of it from when I built mine. I'm sure I have shoulder pads and stuff galore laying around.
Okay. Well, thank you for the offer.
I can hook you up with a scheme too if that's what you're after, because
I'm always up for stuff. Just I'll put them in my little reference notes that I have on my phone. You never know when you'll break it out. Need it. Sorry to hijack, Jacob.
No, it's all good. Do we have any last notes to touch on in hobby progress? And then do we want to get into our viewer mail, or do we want to talk about the exemplary battle a little bit before we get into that?
Much like Regal Dorn, I have no pants.
Thank you
Well-
for that contribution.
Jack, as an aside, when do you ever have pants other than when you're at work?
I keep pants on a hook by the front door. Those are my
This
door
is-
pants.
Not a
This-
house.
No, no house court. Just door pants.
So you're saying you're in Kansas, but your pants aren't in Kansas anymore?
No, they're by the front door.
I have been to your house. I know for a fact that is true. You do have pants hanging by the front door.
So tell me about this exemplary battle because I've been out of touch with everything.
So it's Blood Angels, which Dan touched on earlier, talking about his he's working on the whatever the unit is called, and
Ophanium.
yeah, Ophanian, and obviously I got that very wrong. It's not an Irish name at all. And the other one is actually Iron Hands because, of course, it couldn't be a loyalist versus a traitor. It had to be a loyalist versus a loyalist because they were the last ones left. The unit for the Iron Hands is
Morlocks.
Morlocks, yeah, and they're both basically kind of cool retinues, limited in size. The Morlocks are in Terminator armor, cataphractic to be specific, and are really kind of neat. To the point of I was like, oh, this is something that I would actually be interested in running if I actually played Iron Hands, but I'm not a filthy loyalist, so I can't do that.
Yeah, I've got some overall concerns or like question marks over the total balance of the Morlocks. They don't
Yeah,
get
Jake and I have been talking about that a bit.
Thunderhammer access, but they can be scoring, and so they get to stack both the Iron Hands rule and Battle Hardened 1. So I think you've got to be something like Strength well to be able to instant death them out.
Yes.
So normal Iron Hands will suffer instant death at the hands of a las cannon. But because these guys are Battle Hardened 1, they count your strength as 1 point lower, I believe, for the purposes of instant death. So it's possible that, like, Strength 10 would. But regardless, already my one game that I did play against Iron Hands some time ago was very challenging for me, just because I basically didn't bring any las cannons because I was playing my Alpha Legion, and I just, outside of 2 or 3 speeders I put on the table, I just didn't have the capacity to get las cannons on the table. But I had Meltas that just kind of pittered off the army. Womp womp. Neither here nor there, though. And then the Blood Angels, can they take a standard, Dan, or are they a choppy command squad only?
Choppy only.
Okay, so it is a jump pack command squad that's limited to 5 models, if I recall.
It can be a jump pack.
or
It doesn't
walking.
have to
It
be.
can be, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I thought they came with.
I am planning on doing it because I'm doing Dawn of Revelations or Day of Revelations, whatever it is, and I plan on that part of the army being jumpy. But yes, they can be either.
Yeah, so you end up looking at a command squad that's limited to Terminator numbers. Still 2 wounds, still 2 up armor. No invul native, if I'm right, but I think they can take combat shields, or do they have combat shields native?
They have combat shields native.
Okay,
They
so they
Tough 4, tough 5.
tough 4.
Four.
But then they have a 6-up invuln because of the combat shield. Their swords are, I think, strength +2, AP3, and are they rending 6?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yes.
Are they murderous strike as well, or just rend?
Murderous Strike and Rending 6, both.
Okay. That's
Bonkers.
interesting. So that definitely puts them a little closer to Emperor's Children, should we make it there with tonight's discussion. I think they're quite good, but I don't know that they immediately stand out to me as a potential balance concern in the same way. They do have Chosen Warriors, and I think they have a special rule that gives them +1 initiative and a move to rending 4+ in a challenge.
I'll also say this. The Blood Angel of Phantom, they are 3 attacks apiece, and their swords are all 2-handed. So it's not quite as concerning, because you're not going to have, like, 4 base attacks all the time with that 2-handed weapon.
Yeah, you'll be 4 attacks on the charge, 20 attacks, minimum 10 hits, probably 15 by the time you get a chaplain in there.
Yep.
Like, don't get me wrong, they will absolutely do a number on normal power armor units, but what power armor unit are anything with at least power swords not going to run over immediately? That's my
Reavers.
2 cents anyway.
My big concern for them is they're kind of
yeah.
pricey.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're
at 130 base,
expensive. They only have a 6-up invuln. They're very choppy, and I think they're playable. But I think that they are. I don't know. To my eye test or to my sniff test, they rank very similarly to Chieftain. Utterly playable.
yeah, I'm not going to say I complain about them. I actually think, if anything, they're slightly overcosted.
I agree.
Because for the 3 of Phantom you get, it's 130 points. And then it's for each additional guy, up to 5, it's 40 points a pop. 50 if you put them in jump packs. And that's just a bit of a kick in the teeth for something that doesn't even have a better invulnerable save than a 6+ in close combat.
I was gonna say the 130 is without jump packs, right? So it's 160 if you put them in jump packs.
Oof, these are sounding a lot like the problems I have with Jetpack. It's that they don't have a lot of that survivability. I mean, at least these guys come with the 2-up native, so that helps some. But
well, as long as you don't put them in. I mean, if you take them not as a retinue, you can put an apothecary in there, right? Still.
Yeah.
Yes, that's something that Jake and I actually talked about. If you buy them separately as just an HQ selection on their own, yes, you can put an apothecary in there. That is the only way to do that, other than buying a
Primus Medicaid.
That dude.
Yeah. What does the modeling option look like for this? Was it? I know it's not a standalone kit, but how did the models look with the way GW did?
They actually listed out the stuff for the blood angel.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
for the
think
Blood
they
Angels,
used
they
the
listed it.
plastic Mark IVs and kit bashed off those.
Plastic
Yeah.
Mark IVs, Sanguinary Guard, and then I think the shields were part of the Dreadnought kit. The Blood Angels.
Yeah.
Dreadnoughts.
The plastic Furioso kit where you've got they're using them as almost bucklers. Can normal command squads take combat shields?
They can take boarding shields for sure.
they could take combat.
Okay, cool. You just get where I was like, I could see that being a reason to upcharge them. The other reason why I think they could probably be upcharged the way they are is knowing that Sanguinius exists and still gives +1 strength on the charge, or +1 weapon skill for jump packs on the charge, which is pretty gross.
Yeah. I don't dislike them. I don't dislike them at all, but my big realistic concern is you compare these straight across to what the Morlocks that got released, and the Morlocks themselves are 35 points and have a 4-up invulnerable save.
I mean, I think anything is going to... So if we take our now 18 exemplary battle units, I think that most of them will feel like they come up short or they come up wanting once you've seen...
In some areas, yeah.
Sun Killers and Morlocks. It feels like everything else is at least a half step down. I think Deliverers still rate pretty highly, even though they lost scoring this edition. But because their peers did too, it's maybe a little less concerning. And I would say Chieftains are pretty good.
Chieftains are good, but they're not world beaters. They're a good unit.
Yeah.
And I say this playing them on a regular basis. I hate to say this, I kind of think that the Iron Warriors one might be the best overall.
Yeah, they were.
Oh, the Terminators?
Yeah, those guys.
The Dominator cohort?
Yeah, those are sick.
Yeah, that's it. Guys that come with a free Thunderhammer in this edition and Weapon Skill 5. And Chosen Warriors.
Yeah, that's hard to beat.
Yeah, my take on the Blood Angels dudes, and this is a guy that's his bits in the mail to put them together, is exactly what you said, right? They aren't world beating. That's not like they're going to be a must take in anything, but they're playable. And I love the lore. I love the modeling opportunities. I love doing up the unit in black and putting a chaplain with them as a warden and having these are the guys that are going to go out and police their own guys. I just really like the concept of them in that regard. So I think they're playable enough, they're fluffy enough, and they fit kind of the concept of what I want to do with my army. And that's, when it comes down to building an army, that's what I look for in Heresy, right? I don't want complete crap units. I want units that I'm going to be able to at least, have a chance at winning a game. And then I want to fit a cool lore and cool modeling opportunities. And I think that, they fit that bill really well for me, as I was looking for something to do with the command squad retinue anyway. So
I will say this. I really like the feel of the Ophanin Court. I like the idea, the way they look, the way they got modeled. They're not world beaters, as I said, but I definitely think they fit the fluff and they fit the feel for Heresy. That they're a fun thing that's not over the top, if you get what I mean.
It's a real feels good unit.
It is. I would not have a problem fielding it if I was playing Blood Angels or seeing it on the field, fighting it. I like them.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
I like them more than that Jump Dread.
Oh, you don't like the Incandius or whatever it's called?
I think it looks goofy as all get out. I really do. I say this as a guy who has a Blood Angel tattoo on his shoulder, and has multiple Blood Angel stuff over there, including one of them. I think it looks goofy. I really, truly do.
Is that just because the arms seem a little spindly to the body? Because that's always caught me as a little odd.
Those arms look... not only did he skip leg day, he also skipped arm day. But by golly, he definitely did his job on chest and gut day.
Yeah, he looks like the quintessential drawing of the guy that...
Humpty Dumpty?
There you go.
Yes, he does. Those arms look about half too small. Maybe a little bit less than that, but a bit too small, and the legs look a bit too small. And my big thing is, it's a jump pack on him. He jumps forward. I don't really see how those legs stand up to the impact of him landing on the ground. It just seems...
If you're going that way, look at the Night Raptors that basically don't have any ACLs or MCLs.
You ain't joking, brother. Some of the people who have designed some of these models for Heresy and GW over the years, I don't think they know anatomy or physics at all. It scares me.
Yeah,
well, maybe we just
beefy for a long time.
I think the legs on that first limited edition standard bear for the Ultramarines, the one that was not Remus and is now not Remus because they came out with Remus. I think his legs are thicker than the Jump Dread legs, to be honest.
Dreads are thicker than his torso.
I think I bought that guy from Jameson. I know I've got him sitting on the shelf.
I don't know. I think the adherence came out pretty good too, though. If you really look at that unit, it's pretty tough to beat that one as well. Pound for pound, they don't have anything cool like Chosen Warrior, but it's a very playable all around unit, which is nice after being one of the last legions to actually get something.
I don't even remember seeing the Dark Angel when I'm reading it now.
Jacob, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Yeah, no. The Dark Angel one was just a variant inner circle.
Yeah.
They were just use the same models, just here's a unique rule that only these guys get, as opposed to the 6 that the other guys get to pick from at the start of the game.
Yep.
At least they're keeping with what they know.
Which apparently is stabbing stuff.
I mean, it fits.
So back on track.
I was gonna say, I think more exciting though, outside of if you're a Blood Angel or Iron Hands player, was the distinct hint that possibly starting as soon as this week, we might start seeing militia and demons start cropping up in exemplary battles.
Yeah, finally.
I'm somewhere, like, obviously for all the people who this means that they're finally going to have rules for models that they own and have played with previously. I'm very happy about that. But I'm definitely just like, really? This is where we're going to be at. We couldn't have had this kind of thing. Like, even if you would have just put a unit of demons in a PDF like this, like release day, where it's just like, oh, here's a placeholder to use when you use an esoterist or word bearers and you summon.
Yeah, and I'm also worried a little bit about viability. Militia really, at least the way I built them and the way I saw a lot of people building them, is they lived and died on their artillery, and they needed that artillery to do the work. Militia themselves were pretty much just bodies to throw at things, and you could build the crazy, fearless, giant, rending horde of stupid, but a lot of other militia lists really relied on artillery, and artillery has taken it to the gut this edition. Templates reducing from 5 to 3 or 3 to just single wounds, on top of the fact that most of them have lost whatever AP that they had that was great, and it's been moved to AP4s and usually high rend. So I'm not. I really want to see what it's going to look like, and I want to be able to build my list and see. Obviously, I'm going to have to do something new because it's they made sure that you have to buy things for every army that's coming out. So it'll be really interesting to see what they've done to try to keep up. I know driving around Michael's last event, Lucas and John Stanford and Jackson and I were all looking at going through the Ox list, and you could build crazy rapier lists, and then there was a bunch of other crazy new builds that weren't available at all before. It'll be really interesting to see where they go.
We're starting to see a lot of, especially local, starting to see a lot of Auxilia, and almost all of them are starting to take 3 and 4 sets of rapier batteries, which is fine. It's a perfectly acceptable tool for them to use, and they should be using. It's funny that they're taking so many of them, especially conversely to what they did take as Auxilia before.
Yeah, it'll you could take like 22 max, I think was the math that someone.
Yeah, you can take about 22 of them. But the other cool thing that Auxilia can do is they can pretty freely just take full companies of Lehman Russes. I think at 2,000 points, I can take 11 Vanquishers and still have 2 units of 10 dudes for grabbing objectives.
You're saying I need to buy more history?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You
always need to buy more Histincts.
And then you need a substance, something that subs in for a maggot and a bug, and maybe an earthquake if you just want to get crazy.
All of these are sounding like great options.
As I try to glue wood.
Actually, you know what, John? Those new crawlers for those Necromunda would be a good bug stand-in.
Stop it.
Or the what do you call them? SWAT tanks.
Change objectives, Jacob.
Subject of something else to talk about. We did have a listener reach out to us and ask how to start running events. And that's a pretty open-ended question, but we're sure gonna try to do our best to at least give sort of the basic check sheet of things that we would encourage people to do or make sure they have done before your event gets posted on Facebook or gets posted on the bulletin board at the friendly local. First and foremost is to figure out where you're going to be able to play, and that includes how many tables are going to be available. For some of us, I can pretty readily blankly point to myself here. This has probably never been an issue. Ever since I've started hosting events at Ryan's, the thought of we've run out of tables has just never really crossed my mind relative to how many people who we get to turn up. But I know that for a lot of venues that's important. And so kind of pursuant to that is to reach out to others who you know in the community who you think are likely going to be able to attend, and to figure out what you collectively can provide that the game store may not have. If the game store has blank tabletops and they're going to be missing out on boards, mats, and terrain, being able to supplement that should the need arise. So if the store says, hey, we've got 6 tables, that means we can fit 12 players. If this is your first event and you don't have a super well-established community, 12 players may be plenty to think about. If this is somewhere established, or if you know that even just doing pickup games on any given Saturday, you're seeing 20 people come in, you may need to start figuring out what it's going to take to at least accommodate 60 to 80% of your pickup game players. And I say that because by the time my experience has been about 60% of your pickup players will make it on any given week, but you'll get a couple other people either from surrounding areas who may not be regulars, but who will kind of come up out of the woodwork to support another event scene. That's something really to be mindful of. From there, you want to figure out what you are doing for overall structure. Whether that's, are we doing this as a standalone event? Are we doing this as part of an ongoing narrative campaign? Am I going to do a system map, or am I just going to like keep a score sheet in the back of like how many games each side wins, how many victory points each side wins? And that in and of itself can be something important to do, because you could say, hey, at the end of 4 events, trader players managed to win 10% more games than the loyalists, whatever that slim margin is. But then you can say, hey, loyalists, don't despair, because if we look at total victory points accumulated over the campaign, loyalists may be up victory point with traders. And I think that can sometimes be a way to let the narrative be shaped by chance, or at least by the actions of players, to say that even if the traders are winning, they're kind of taking some Pyrrhic wins. And so that then, for the next year or for the next event, you can roll that forward and say, hey, if we want to give some thematic buffs to different players or different factions. So I've been to some narrative events where everybody on a given team got a certain benefit, either in a game round or once per day sort of thing. Or I've seen from the other direction, and I can point to Michigan GT just in the last 6 months, who did this. They actually had almost an apocalypse style deck of cards that they dealt out to the warlords between rounds and said, here, go distribute these among your forces as you see fit. And that in and of itself can be really exciting, because that's a way to not only give your warlords something to do, or your war masters something to do, but it can be a way to promote social gaming experience. If somebody has ended up in a match where they are starting to get a little concerned or sweat, and they're like, man, I know you asked me to take this table, but I'm not sure like my Raven Guard are going to be able to deal with this armored breakthrough list. Well, maybe one of the cards is something tantamount to air support, and you get to conduct the equivalent of a strafing run with a lightning or a Xiphon just to try to take one preemptive shot on one tank. That can really change the tide of that battle.
I always liked the idea of something like a artillery support in the background, like another person who has artillery tanks, where you total up how many artillery tanks there are total amongst like the loyalists or the traders. And in one round, there's 7 artillery tanks in total in the entire grouping. There can be, say, half, or rounded up or rounded down, either way, so 3 or 4 random bombardments total on different tables. Something like that's always been seeming kind of cool to me.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you're doing the round bonuses, make sure it's not something overly complicated, like, your every third unit gets an XY bonus, something like that. You want to make sure it's something that not only you can keep track of as the EO, but also that the players can. And this takes into account various levels of inebriation that players may be under.
Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be simple. Otherwise, they're going to break it.
I think that's something too, and you've got some really good points there, Jacob. But I would say, if you really are running your first event and you've got a fresh community, I've been parts of leagues and campaigns for Blood Bowl, Heresy, Necromunda, 40K, and if you get too overly complicated from the beginning, it's never going to work out. So, you can get complicated to a point, and if you know your players are going to show up and be able to handle it, you can take it a lot of steps. But if you're starting out, I would say, keep it simple to a point, because you're just going to run into a situation where your complication is going to make you run into problems where it doesn't work. So, that's one thing that I would throw out there for sure. Not that, there aren't some cool ideas and you can't run cool campaigns, but the more complicated you get, the more things that can go wrong.
110%. Thank you for absolutely putting front and center. If you have not run events before, the simpler you keep things, the more you can figure out what is and isn't working for your community, and then that can sculpt or shape other decisions. I can throw as kind of a side note for events that I would attend, and this even happened at certain points at 40K as well. Any time that the event organizers wanted to motivate hobby progress, but not disallow those people with unpainted armies from participating, they would give the equivalent of like a once per game, you may nominate one fully painted unit, and it will gain preferred enemy for a single turn against an unpainted unit.
Gray Marines.
Yep. And there's a sliding scale that you can adjust there. So if you've got one dude who is like habitually bad about not painting his army, and maybe he's not a bad dude, maybe you just want to see him get to be better and to grow as a player and as a hobbyist, sometimes these subtle nudges and nods can help move things in a positive direction without having to call somebody out. But that being said, I don't bring that up to detract from Dan's point. The newer you are to running events, the more I encourage you to play closer to those are somewhere between guardrails and training wheels to help kind of keep things on the up and up or on the upright until you've figured out which way things tend to.
Yeah, and as attendees, you never like bemoan bookmans. It's never like, oh, we're doing like most attendees will never just hate you for running.
Okay, you say that, but 6th edition we had the Relic, and I knew people bemoaned that one.
Okay, that's a valid point. Relic was fun, but I understand that the more you play at events, the more you see the same missions over and over again.
Yeah,
but if I go to an event and I've never been to an event before, I would much rather see book missions there than Bob's special breed of fun that doesn't make any sense to me and gets me confused as all get out. Yeah, I mean, I'll play that special mission or whatever. Well,
yeah. And how many of us have been to that table where there's supposed to be a earthquake or an orbital bombardment at the beginning of each player's turn, and you have to roll for all the units, and they can take wounds and have been through, and for whatever reasons, distractions, drunkenness, whatever, have just done it once or never done it at all throughout the whole freaking game, and you still had fun most of the time, right? I mean, it didn't make a difference to it. So, that's another thing too, right? And we brought up the inebriatedness or the how familiar you are. If you're brand new to a new rule set and just learning it, and you got a fresh community, and you're putting in complicated rules that they're just going to forget and not use, it's just not worth it. So
the more complicated you make a mission, the more liable you make it to where your players go, you know what, that's cool, but I don't want to do that, so let's just kill each other.
Hold on. John,
love those missions.
John made an excellent point of this in one of our earliest shows where he was like, anytime it took more than about 15 words to explain what a unit did, I just decided to shoot that unit first because I was done.
Well, and anytime it takes more than 3 or 4 minutes to read the mission pack, hey, we're going to do something else. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Especially if you've been drinking. Kill points? Wonderful, let's go.
Hot dog or hamburger, which one's it going to be? Because we're not going to play this weird alternative setup that doesn't make any sense.
I also
Make sure
want
you
to
can actually use the deployment zones too. If you've got tables that are literally butted up against each other, do not do the long edge because
and don't do the triangle one either.
Don't do the pizza.
Short players,
you're hot dog. No hamburger, no pizza, only hot dog.
Yeah, never do the one where you got guys in the middle and everyone else is around the outside, because that mission's never winnable for the.
I actually love the Japanese flag deployment. I love it. I love it. I love it. Because you only ever see it once in an entire weekend.
That's not used.
Okay, so there is something really, really important kind of nested in here, which is when you go and talk to your venue about how much time you can or cannot have, please be generous with your budget. And by budget, I don't necessarily mean monetarily. Unless you and your player base are comfortable with a strict timer. If you think that players are going to get done with a 3,000 point game in 2.5 hours, even if, and I can't even swear if this is the case, that's the way 40K used to be, to my, like, recollection for the tournament scene and stuff. Magic is still, anytime you play Standard, I have more memories than I can count of the judge shouting, "You've got 50, go." Especially with players who may be newer to events, you who may be new to running events and aren't familiar with how many judge calls you're gonna get. Give yourself time to breathe, sort things out, and take care of yourself and your players. So if you know that you can get in the venue from 10 a.m. until they close at like 9 p.m., awesome. Figure out what lunch plans are going to be, and then figure out if you're going to attempt 3 3-hour rounds, or if you're going to say, we're going to do like 2 4-hour rounds, and that way people can get out of here a little early, especially if you find out that you have people coming in from a really broad geographic. Just be super mindful, because, cite him again, John calls out repeatedly, time is kind of the one thing you can't fake or manufacture. It's sort of this finite quantity. You have what you have.
Lunch, unless you're bringing lunch in and serving everybody the same thing, give an hour, because it's never going to happen in half an hour. For example,
all the health things that you think about as an attendee, eating well, getting a good night's sleep, all that other stuff, double it. Double the importance of that if you're running it, because you're not just using the normal brain power that you for playing a game. You're using the brain power for running an event, making sure that everyone else is having fun, making sure what little rules interactions might be happening. You've got to get like Jacob said, you've got to get the school or the food ordered on time. You've got to make sure that you've got to get the right deliveries. You've got to go pick up the food, or make sure that someone else is picking it up for you. And did you make sure that you didn't forget that someone has an allergy to something that you might have ordered and they need something special to eat? So you've got to have all this stuff jumping around in your brain as you go, and you need to make sure that your body can.
Running an event is stressful. It's more stressful than playing in the event. So you have to make sure that you have the mindset of, you may not have, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but you may not have the most fun experience ever. It may be very stressful, and it may really suck. But putting on a good event is its own reward. But everything that everybody's saying is true. Every time I put on an event, the first thing I have to think of is, I've got a couple of guys here that don't eat pork. And guess what? They're super cool dudes, and I'm super happy to comply with their needs and to help them out. So I always make sure I have something on hand that they can eat. Not every event organizer does that, but every event organizer should. You need to make sure you take care of your people. They're the whole reason you can have that event.
Yep.
Make sure you take care of them.
The same way
friends.
that we tell people, your point in playing the game, your joy should come out of at least part and partial, like, the interaction with the other person. Some of your joy in hosting has to come from, like, living vicariously through seeing other people enjoy getting to play the event you've put on.
If you're gonna do a painting or hobby, best painted or something like that, that's more than theme or favorite army, make sure the person that you got judging it understands miniature painting and shading and depth. And that's the first thing is, I've seen armies and come in that are amazing, and people just don't like them for whatever reason. And some army that isn't as good wins best painted, and it's the first thing that I'll think about it, and it's like, why don't they have someone judging painting that knows what the heck they're talking about? So a vote for favorite army is sometimes better than best painted if you don't know for sure you got someone that can judge painting, for example.
And you can always do both too. That's always fun.
Something to keep in mind here, and this is something that I've always seen people initially struggle with. Remember, it's an event. It does not mean that you are the only one who's running it. Get yourself good people to help you do everything. You're going to need to take a bathroom break. You're going to need to do this for this table. At the same time, you're over there helping them with whatever because Bob dropped his dingus on the whatever table, and now everything is all messed up. There's going to be a question over at this other table about how this rule interaction works or how that works. Have yourself some people who are going to help you, and not just the whole paint judging thing, but kind of put together a rubric of what the actual paint judges are looking for, and try to get like not just your game judges to help you with that, but some people who are good at what they do paint wise, so they can sit there and actually be the judges. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm a great painter, but I understand how to paint well, even if I can't do it all the time. But I would never say that I'm going to be a great judge for painting.
I have also previously, so we've gone more to a raffle system for prize distribution at the end of events. But even when we weren't, if you are giving out score sheets to players for them to fill out every round, have them note who they played against and give them a sportsmanship score. And then at the either that or at the end of your rounds for the day, give everybody a blank slip of paper and have them do two things: write their favorite opponent and write their nominee for a people's choice. And I've told players you can pick anything you want for choice. You can do it on army composition. You can do it on paint job. You can do it just because, like, this dude was the life of the party and you would hate to think about an event without this person. That is an absolutely great way to push that social element.
And make sure that in your packet, stuff is spelled out. You can just saying there will be paint judging is you have to make sure that people understand how you're doing. And if you want to do people's choice, you can have a couple different ways of doing that. Michael likes to do the colored beads. Like Jacob said, you can do the write down thing. I'm a little more partial to the write down just because that stops some of the confirmation bias along with the judging way. So you don't like, oh, so and so's already winning, I might as well just vote for him. But either way is fine. You know, I'm not knocking either one of them. I'm just saying that you make sure that you write down and everyone knows how you're going to be doing.
I also would like to suggest that you don't have to say best loyalist, best trader. You could have most things that are awesome, like a most thematic event that occurred during the actual game, during the entire event. Like you see somebody who their praetor's going up against 3 different dreads and somehow it wins. His praetor stomps all 3 of them and survives and then gets murdered by a tactical squad. That would be thematic as all get out. It would be a cool thing to actually have. It would be a wonderful thing. And I guarantee you that the players from that table are going to remember that game more than any other game they had during that entire event. Something like that is cool. Other people are going to like it. Other people are going to say, man, that's awesome. And that would be a cool thing to give out for a most thematic award or most thematic incident award.
And this goes back to kind of what I was talking about earlier today. Make sure your players know. Obviously, they need dice and they need an army and they need a tape measure. But are you limited on space? Do you recommend that people bring a box that they could roll dice in or a dice tray? Do they need to bring a display board so that you can have your paint judging between rounds? Or are you okay with them putting all their models out on terrain? Do you need to make sure that you've also got if you've got special rules for NPCs, do they need to bring those along? I've seen a lot of people are starting to run the remembrancer so that everyone needs to bring along a remembrancer. Or are you running a map campaign and everyone needs to bring along an extra model to put on the map? These are things that you need to make sure are in your packet and called out in bold, not just in the middle of a paragraph, or I'd say put it in the beginning and put it at the end as, hey, in summary, reminder, you will need bam, 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 bam. All this stuff.
Bullet point that.
All your templates,
all the stuff
all
that's
your
outside
dice.
the norm needs to be double checked and double spelled out. That was the thing that no one realized today. You know, this was always assume that everybody coming to your event, this is their first event. It might be your first event, but assume that your players, this is their first event. They need to make sure that they know everything that they need.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
I'll put this out there as well. You're coming to an event. You are going to fight somebody who forgot their templates, who left their template at another table. That template's walked off and it will not be found. Even if you don't have a single template, flamer or large blast or small blast in your list, even if you don't have a single one, bring them with you. Because I guarantee you at least once your opponent's going to need to have one. And it's better than him or her, fishing around to other tables and begging someone to loan them one for just a few minutes. For the love of God, bring it with you. That way, when your opponent goes, man, something's happened to my template. It's wandered off. I don't know how to do it, and I can't really get away from this. I'm kind of crowded in. Just go, here, there you go. You've got one. Use it for this game, and then give it back to me.
Rules. I would highly recommend if you're running an event, have your rules on a laptop or an iPad. All digital, all searchable. Something's going to come up. You're going to want to look up a rule. Having, what are we at? 8 books right now, 7 books. Not knowing where the books are sucks. Where stuff is in books, even better. Some of the reference sheets out there, but I highly recommend having all your stuff digital.
And
Easy to
print
look
off
up.
the FAQs. If you've
Yeah,
got
print off.
FAQs that have just come out, print them off, because you're not going to just have, not just you need to remember them, but you might have someone in the event that didn't know that an FAQ came out for their army or changed a rule in something. I remember one event I was running, we said we allowed the Forge World Imperial Armor book. And it turns out that this guy had a codex that hadn't been updated yet. And so the rhinos in the Imperial Armor book were 20 points cheaper than his rhino. So he was taking all the Imperial Armor rhinos, and so his list was actually 120 points over budget because he'd taken all the cheaper rhinos. So make sure you spell out in the event, if you're going to use home rules, or if you're going to use something different than the book that is just the book mission or the book army lists, you specifically spell out what change. So we're going to get a little nerd drama. There's a giant nerd fight between Panopticon and Mournival and House Rules and whatnot. It's a new game. We're feeling our way out, but make sure if you're going to use that stuff, I'm not weighing on either camp, but make sure if you're going to use that, people know that's all they want to know. You might get some people that complain either way, but just make sure that everyone knows.
So I want to double down on your point there, John. If you are using or looking for anything, download it at least the day before. Do not assume that you will have network connectivity at your venue. Even if you've been to that venue 1,000 times, don't assume you're going to have network connectivity there. Follow up from that to John's point.
I'll actually
yeah.
do one after you're done, but yeah.
So John said it, and we've kind of beaten around it here. The earlier that you can have your packet nailed down, and by packet, we don't always exclusively mean rules. That's something we don't always exclusively mean missions. That's something for you and your player base to figure out. Some player bases really, really love knowing what's going to get played in what round ahead of time. Some places don't. Some places think that is some of your test of generalship, is to figure out what the mission is when you get to the table and to roll with that punch. But regardless of what you choose, you should be telling players up front what you've chosen. If you're playing 3,000 points, you gotta tell them that. If you are saying core units only, no legacy units, so no legacies of the Age of Darkness, no XBAT units, you've got to tell them that up front. If you are including those, and even if you're not including those, even just putting some links out there to the FAQ page, to the XBAT page, to the legacy, so that players can find some of these non-standard sources. If somebody's just been coming into the game store every Saturday, maybe they don't follow the social media like we do, they may have no idea what an exemplary battle unit is, or a Legacies of the Age of Darkness unit. They may have no concept. And admittedly, I find that most players are willing to roll with it, but the easiest way to mitigate some of those concerns is to have things out up front. And what's more, as we talk about some of this stuff, we used to have an entire binder. Technically, we had 2 of them that were at the barn that were the full printout of the Zone Mortalis rules, because at one point they became hard to come by, and by having 2 full Zone Mortalis rulebooks, we saw way more people play and enjoy playing Zone Mortalis. So if you know that you're going to be in partnership with this game store for the long run, maybe it's time to talk about running over to Kinko's or wherever and getting some binders printed up of these Legacy and XBAT units, and maybe even the FAQ, and donating those to the game store and just being like, hey, by the way, if you have people in here who are playing Heresy, these are resources that are available.
But one of the things to throw in, and I know we are focused on narrative, but there's people that are a lot more people than there used to be at any rate, getting interested in competitive Heresy, and that's not my thing. I'm not gonna ever run an event that way. I'm not gonna ever play an event that way. But if you are running a tournament or something competitive, let your players know that, right? If I showed up an event that I thought was a narrative event, and it turns out it's just it's a tournament, I would be very disappointed. And if you're a tournament player and you don't know and you show up for a narrative event and all of a sudden you've got your list you're going to try and beat people up with, and someone's dropping extra bombs on your army because you're too good, you're probably not going to be real happy about that. So, even that expectation right up front is probably a really important thing to set.
Yeah. Duncan, you had one, and then I'll follow back through.
Make certain. I'll use myself for example. I love the legacy units. I love the exemplary battle units, and I use just in my generic Sons of Horus list. I use one of each. I use a legacy and an exemplary battle unit. Make certain that if your players are bringing those units, that they bring the rules for that unit, either printed out and attached to their army list, or a printed out copy that their opponent can review. Because as you said, not everyone's going to know where this comes from, and not everyone's going to know these rules, and some people are going to be kind of anal about it. I have for going to Adepticon, for example, if I take what I'm thinking about taking up there, and I take a chieftain squad, in any army list that I include a chieftain's unit, I'm going to include a copy of the chieftain's rules. Anytime I'm going to bring a Reaver Aggressor squad, I'm going to bring a printout and attach it to the army list for the Reaver Aggressor squad so that my opponent knows what it is, what it's affected by, and where it works and where it comes from. Because I don't want someone to sit there and be like, I've never encountered this before in my life. I've never seen the internet. And have a problem with it. I don't want that to happen. I want them to actually sit there and be able to have a fun game and not be confused by the fact that I have something that they didn't know about.
I got one. If you don't mind,
I always print. Go ahead.
I would say the other thing that's really important, even if you are using bookmix, there are certain rules that either don't exist or kind of exist on the edges. I'm talking mainly about who can score. If you've got small changes to things that are right in your head, and this is the biggest thing, you've got to over communicate. I hate to say it, but oftentimes if it's something that even you think is easy to know, that you might as well just write it down just in case. That way, everyone can at least refer back to that. But if you're doing a special objective or something like that, make sure you understand who can score, as far as, can infantry pick up this objective, or is it only non-vehicle unit? When you say non-vehicle, do you mean dreadnought? Do you also mean armiger? What happens is you get a giant spooling problem of pulled it onto the spaghetti yarn, and it just goes everywhere because every one of these little rules interactions happen. You've also got things that some people like to argue about and go off onto this tangent as well, where silly rules interactions that you see as a TO. How does barrage work on build? Short answer, it doesn't. It's kind of questions of how you want to rule these things. How do flamers work on building? Question. How do you see buildings working? Because they took away in the rule book, draw a line around connect the dots of the pieces of ruins, and that's your area terrain. That's gone now. Basically, unless you're touching the terrain, it's so any of those type of rules interactions that, again, we've been playing for years. We know these things because I had this happen to me when we were playing in an event a few months ago in North Texas. There was a kid that just walked up as his first Heresy game, and I said, "Okay, well, I'm in this cover," and he said, "No, you're not touching it." I said, "Oh, okay, sorry." We usually just play that. If you're in the outline of the building, you're in the area terrain. So if you've got those guys over there, they're in area terrain. Those guys are in area terrain. Oh, do I have to take dangerous terrain tests? And I said, you know what? We're just screwing around. I've already messed it up. You don't have to worry about difficult terrain tests for that. I didn't think about it beforehand. That was on me. I screwed that up. But make sure you put that in your packet if you want to use these rules that make the game logically make sense. But that's also kind of goes hand in hand with, going back to Jacob's point, knowing your environment is really important as well. If you don't have a bunch of terrain that's just random ruin corners, you don't have to worry about that. If you've got everything based, or if your store that you're playing at has everything based, you don't have to worry about that. If you don't have a bunch of multi-story buildings, you don't have to worry about how things are. So I would over-express things. That's just how I am in general, if you haven't noticed, listeners. But it's completely up to how you want to do that. I would just say make sure that you type out as much as you can and give people as much. Because if someone's asking you a question, there's probably 12 other people that had that question, but just, oh, I know how that works. And they just immediately went on, and then they went throughout their day, and then they're just going to run into problems later, and they're going to keep that in the back of their... So Those are the things that I keep running in.
Yeah, the less ambiguous you leave social contract and social understanding of things, including how competitive an event this is intended to be, the better it's going to be, buddy. That again, that also includes like prize distribution. If you are upfront and tell players, hey, by the way, the player who earns the most victory points does not necessarily get first pick of price or first place. This is not something where everybody pays a $10 entry fee and then first place gets 50 or 60% of the pot. If you are upfront about that, you're more likely to have better experiences.
And don't if you're running your first event and you expect 8 to 10 people to show up at a game store and play games, and don't worry about having a full AOD box set to give away for one player, right? You know, I've driven hours to events and played in events with no expectations of any prize support and gotten no prize support, right? You know, it's, you know, if you're charging $100 for 3 games in a day, probably expect some prize support, or some lobster for dinner and fillet or something. But you know, you don't. An event doesn't rely on prize support to be successful necessarily, depending on the size and scope.
Well, and you'll find with narrative events, as adversely to say a competitive event, there's less of a focus on the prizes and more of a focus on like the cool community stuff. Like, for instance, the store that I run most of my events at, I have an agreement. 25% of all my ticket sales goes into the store in the form of prize support, and they want me to buy stuff, and that's great. It's the best way that I can support them, and it's what they enjoy, so we do it. But I also do stuff like order a bunch of templates from Death Ray Designs and hand them out because they're cool. Do something fun. You know, find a local guy with a laser cutter and get him to do something cool for you.
You say do something fun. I will shout this every time it comes up. I have been a huge fan of Wooden Spoon Awards for as long as there have been Wooden Spoon Awards to give out. For those unaware, Wooden Spoon goes to the person who, if I were framing it as positively as possible, had the best attitude in spite of the worst outcomes. This is somebody who, no matter how many dice they rolled, just could not get luck to fall their way. I think it was Nashville, Music City, NashCon, 2021. They titled the award, Magnus Did Nothing Wrong, But My Dice on the Other Hand. And I typically have given a novelty dice set. Sometimes it's a nice one. Sometimes it's a little goofy or silly. And sometimes I've also like had the goofy or silly dice for if someone shows up to the event and forgot their dice. It gets to be very, very funny that if turns out that if you've got like a bedazzled tape measure or one that's covered in like fur, that guys will very quickly remember not to leave home without their tape measure because they don't want to use that because it's ridiculous. Or if you have like cotton candy or bubblegum pink dice, a lot of guys will just be like, I don't want to roll those. Those don't match my army. Lo and behold, they'll remember to bring their dice next event.
I got one to that's an interesting thought, and this is something. So what's your guys? What do you think about rating events? So I know I used to show up at the game store for game days and bring to 40K when I was doing that for a little while when I got back into it. And I'd bring my kid up there, and he was 11, 12 at the time. And he plays 40K. He probably better than me competitively, to be freaking brutally honest, at most games. But I'd show up and all the guys would be treading on thin ice and watching their language and all kinds of stuff, because all of a sudden there's an 11 or 12-year-old kid and they were used to hanging out with just a bunch of guys. And, you know, what's your thoughts on that? Do you plan differently? I know, you know, that you don't see it often in Heresy, but in my son's 16, almost 17 now. But I mean, he was 13 and went down to the battle barn and played in a game. And, you know, he was the only kid there, but he hung out with the guys. He bought an army from Ryan and had a hell of a good time. And I think everyone played him at a good time. But something to think about.
I think that comes in usually with the environment. I know that there was the store I worked at for 5 years. Pretty much with you, if you ran events on Saturdays and Sundays, you couldn't even be too loud. Like if you were overly excited about dice rolls and things like that, you had a certain or maximum of noise.
Family
And
store.
yeah, and cursing was pretty much out. It really depends on how your environment is set up. The battle barn, I think it depends on how everyone acts. There's always going to be someone that tries to push the boundary, and then whether or not they get their hand slapped is usually what the environment feels like.
Look, I'll be absolutely honest with everybody. I cuss like a sailor. I cuss every day, all day long. At home, I cuss at work. I cuss during games. I cuss during the podcast, and Jake edits me out because we're a family-friendly podcast. People are going to use salty language, and you're not even going to notice it, and they're not even going to notice it. A lot of times, like for myself, I don't even realize that I'm doing it. I just do it because it's the way I talk. You're going to encounter people doing that. You're going to encounter, as John and Dan have both mentioned, kids or younger people or people who are offended by the casual use of profanity. But you're also going to encounter people who are like, it's no big deal. And they don't even realize they do it. Like me, case in point. Or people who are loud with their giant laughter, like Jack. You've got to make understanding that for people's different personalities in events and people's different styles of play and personality entirely. But if you're going to be doing it in a no profanity area or a no saltiness area, let people know ahead of time, because otherwise I'm going to walk in there and be like, hey, there's John. What's up, you son of a b****? I haven't seen you in forever. And it's not exactly going to go over well if I'm sitting there yelling it loud and people can hear me.
Yeah, the other thing to remember too is you're an EO, not if you want, you can't control the environment. Can control people better than you should. You're not gonna police people's behaviors and mannerisms and things like that within reason. If someone's being lewd or if they're attacking someone or being illegal, obviously, but
yeah,
you can't.
do be aware if you're in a game store, you are there at the privilege or discretion of the owner, and that may be less about the EO and more about, hey, I'm a business and I have to be able to do business.
Well, and always remember that it is a privilege, not a right, to host games inside a game store, to use their tables. This is an honor. This is not just well, I'm doing it. This is something you should take seriously.
Yep.
This is a big deal. Treat it as such. Respect it. I'm in the same boat as Duncan. I cuss all the time. Everybody knows it. If you come to an event, you've heard me say the F word. Like, it just is what it is. It's not out of meanness. But yeah, I mean, I've dropped a couple of F-bombs in front of kids, and and I'll generally turn to the parents and go, I'm sorry. And they'll generally go, it's okay. I mean, they're used to it. It's 2023. Times have changed. Kids are a little used to things that we're not used to.
Just something to think about, though. You may have some situation come up like that that's not what you expect.
Oh yeah.
You're right.
I fully expect that to happen this Adepticon. I fully expect to walk up in the Heresy Hall and be like, "Hey, such and such, how are you?" or whatever. And especially when the alcohol starts to flow, I expect any control over my language is going to go from mediocre to non-existent.
No.
At this point, he's 16 and a half. It'd be 17 by Adepticon. He probably swears more than me when he's not around my wife and I. So that whole problem's not a problem anymore. But.
Oh, thank God.
Well, see, just encourage him to start cussing, and everything will be better. Just say "f*** in front of him. It'll be fun.
If you're giving him an AL8, Duncan, it better just be AL8. There better not be anything else in there.
Hey, I make certain, and you've seen me the way I pour them for people. I ask if they want bourbon with the AL8 first, and then the bourbon goes in the cup.
Yeah, but I don't care if he says yes. The answer with him is no.
I will not serve alcohol to anyone who I believe may be under 21. I promise.
I know you wouldn't.
Now, I might tell him that the bottle's over there, help himself, but,
Yeah, he's not a kid that's going to do.
But maybe he's. Hey, that's why Duncan points.
We as a podcast do not condone underage drinking.
I've always joked that all my expensive booze is upstairs, so if he's down in the basement, he can only drink the cheap stuff, so that's okay.
Yeah, all joking aside, expect alcohol in a larger event that's not just stuff going on at a gaming store. Because
Yeah.
Heresy, by and large, we're an older group. We're more, I want to say financially secure, financially reasonable, because nobody's financially secure. And none of us are reasonable. But a lot of us are middle-aged gamers who like to imbibe. It's going to happen. And if you're in another state that has other laws of legality regarding substances, they may want to imbibe too. Don't judge someone's actions as long as it's legal.
How about this?
Just
Don't
make sure-
judge other people.
Yeah, I was about to say, just make sure that you
Except
Also-
Ultramarines players, we judge.
Yes, we
Yeah,
do.
we
Yeah,
judge him to
Mama.
be the
Hey.
best.
Hey, I cut you off there, John. You're
Yeah.
saying something important.
Yeah, make sure that you get if imbibing of substance is important or not important, make sure that people know that they need to be on time at rounds, whether substances are imbibed or not. Michael ran into this last with the entire trader team going outside to imbibe themselves without telling anybody.
Yes. I cannot say what happened, but there was a 15-minute recess unplanned after round 2 at an event I may or may not have been running because the entire trader team was in the parking lot for some reason that I am not privy to.
That happened a couple times at Heresy.
They all wanted cigarettes. That's all it was. They wanted
Yes.
nicotine.
Cigarettes.
Yes. They were vaping. Yes. You know those kids and those darn vape machines that they use. Those vapors. Yes, Duncan, blow me a cloud. Oh,
Hey, I'm just glad that I quit smoking real cigarettes.
listen, whatever you gotta say to make yourself feel better.
Yep.
I
Pretty much touched on everything about how we ourselves would enjoy events and run events.
I think that might be our most thorough rundown we've given yet about them.
There's
Go
only
ahead.
one thing I'd like to add, or I'd like to touch on. It's not a you might, and this is to mostly to agree with John. It's not a you might want to have someone else help you. It's a if it's over 12 people, you need to have someone help you. If it's
Yeah.
over 24 people, you probably should have 2 people do it.
Yeah.
If you're running
even,
an event,
even
it's
if your
large.
second is just someone who you're like bouncing custom mission ideas off of, or trying to talk about the flow of the day, where it's like, okay, we want check-in at this time, we want dice to roll for the first round at this time. Having another human being who can check you and just be like, you're stupid, our players won't play a 3-hour round because they're either going to play way too fast or way too slow. Big thing. Have another
do not-
human being to talk with.
Do not surround yourself with yes men. You are not going to be helped by that at all. You need to have someone who's willing to sit there and go, shut up, that's wrong. You need to change this. This is not fun. You know, oh, I really think we should do this for day 2. Hey, listen, with the cost of these tickets, maybe we don't do that? You know, maybe instead we do this. Always have someone who's willing to be honest with you.
Yeah, and as we're kind of wrapping up the event as well, you can put out solicitations for feedback. Some gamers won't give it to you. Some gamers will give it to you extra publicly. Some gamers will give it to you behind your back as they talk to other people. There will be ways that you will hear about this. And one of the other things is being an EO does require a thick skin. Sometimes you will upset some people, will not please everybody, and sometimes all of those people show up to your event.
Well, and you have to be willing for people to, like, I got some criticism the other day that came from a really great friend that hit me kind of hard.
I give it to you.
You know, yeah, John hit me with some criticism the other day that hurt a little bit. But at the same time, John didn't give it to me because he hates me. John gave it to me because he knows I can do better. Having people around you who know your potential and who are willing to go, hey, listen, you need to do better because you can do better, is probably better for you than, oh man, that was great. Wow. Like, honesty, man. Get it. Surround yourself with honest people who will help you, really help you.
I'm going to touch off that. You need to have a concrete rule put down for how you're going to handle cheating.
Agreed.
As much as I love the heresy community and love the gaming that we all do, there are people out there who are going to take advantage and are going to cheat. Now, I'm not saying that this is the guy who picked up a 2 and said it was a 5. Although if he keeps doing it, then yeah, that's obviously cheating. The first or second time, it might be a mistake. You're picking up a handful of dice. You thought something was this. A mistake happens. I'm talking about the people who willingly cheat. I have an 8-inch charge. I rolled an 8. My tape measure says it's 9. The guys who are actually physically cheating or hiding dice rolls or have 120 points extra in their list that math doesn't actually say exists. Things like that. It's going to happen.
Or a measuring device that has incrementally too long distance.
Yeah, you're going to see it.
Have opponents sign off score sheets, because I ran the Necromunda tournament, helped run one year at Adepticon, and had a guy actually lie about the number of points he had from his mission on his sheet, and we didn't have opponents signing him yet. And so he ended up getting second place in the event, and when we went back after the end of it, verified by a couple people that he had bumped his points by 2 or 3 points, and he should have been fourth instead of second, and actually screwed my kid who was playing in the same event out of a bronze medal at Adepticon, which the guy who won third actually ended up donating his medal down to my kid because he had won another one previously. But I mean, yeah, have people sign sheets so that you have verification of results.
And I hate to say this, if you're going to have people who have questionable lists, people are sitting there hand drawing it out, don't accept those. Make people turn in something that actually is printed, either through Battlescribe or Quartermaster, where it actually lays out the points out.
Excel.
And if you have access to, Excel even, if you have access to those programs, check the points. Check that these things actually exist.
And make sure that those things are right, too. Because right now, Quartermaster has a big problem in Space Marine Command Squads. The stats are wrong, and some of the points are wrong, too.
Yes.
Yeah. Check for accuracy. As the saying goes, trust but verify. Because none of us want to actually sit there and accuse anybody of intentionally cheating. But Lord knows, there's not a single one of us on this cast who has not made a mistake in the past. I mean, everybody's going to do it, especially if you're going to sit there and go with this third-party resource that is updated by fans. It could be wrong. You never know. Just trust but verify. And if you do find someone who is cheating, like I said, lay out in your packet what's going to happen if someone is. Because there's a guy locally who Jack and I both know who had a reputation for strange levels of movement and fast dice. And while we knew about it and we warned people who he played about it, we couldn't warn EOs about it because what are you going to do? We couldn't make someone fix the game. We couldn't make someone fix this person's behavior. It's going to happen. Plan for it and plan to what you're going to do about it if and when you encounter it.
And to kind of go off of this is a personal opinion of mine. Don't suffer that. If you have someone there who's outright lying, outright cheating, outright making the game experience truly bad for someone else, do not suffer them. Simply tell them, hey, listen, this is what's happening. I've seen it. I've watched it happen. I've had other people see it. I've had other people watch it happen. We're going to go ahead and ask you to leave at this time. You don't have to leave the store, but you will no longer be playing in the event this weekend. There are no refunds available. You can still take your swag bag or whatever you have and have a wonderful time, but you will not be playing any further. Oh, well, that's messed up. I want a refund. That's another thing. That's something we haven't talked about at all. You need to have a refund date in your packet. Hey, the refund date for instance, Warzone is a month ahead of final day. So Warzone will be on the 22nd. The 22nd of August will be the last day you can request a refund. Anything after that, you're just not going to get one. And it's not out of meanness, but we've got to protect the bottom line, and these venues cost a lot of money. We've got to plan for this kind of stuff, and there's some purchases that get made 30 days out. It is what it is. Put your refund policy in there.
It gives the TL a chance to actually fill the spot for somebody else that may or may not have been able to get into those in the first place, too.
Exactly. Well, let's say you're going to fly. I've got a guy who flies in from Utah every year. His name's Colton. He comes to every Warzone, flies from Utah. He's got to fly. So if you've got a guy on a wait list who's going to come, but he lives in Nebraska and you're in Texas, well, he's probably going to have to get a plane ticket. You're probably going to want to tell him pretty quick.
Something built on the back of this. If your EO has asked what side are you playing for, Loyalist or Traitors, please, for the love of the God Emperor, confirm that you will be at an event and what army you intend to bring. If you want to bring a second army, or if you want to volunteer to trade factions like day of, that's fine. But sometimes as EOs, we're trying to say like, oh, how many people are going to be here? I know a lot of my events, unlike Michael's, like, I don't collect entry fees ahead of time. Entry fees end up paid out day of. Now, a lot of that's because we have private prize support. Because we don't have a store that we play at, it means that any prize support that doesn't end up dispersed at a given event, we can just put back in the box and take home. And it'll show up the next time we have an event. But just for the sake of, like, trying to figure out, do I need a second? Do I need 2 people to help me with this event? Not just that, the more people who you have at an event, the longer individual games take. It's crazy, and nobody would probably think of it if you haven't seen it yourself, but the more people you have, the longer your event will take, even if just to sort pairings. If you are doing anything more than Swiss pairings, that part will take time. Lunch will take time, because you're going to have a conga line of everybody getting their plate, getting their food, and then eating. The more people you have, the longer an event will take to run, and so you RSVPing, whether it requires money down or not, is a big help to your event organizer.
Yeah, and I personally, as far as like how I play games, 3,000 points in 2.5 hours aside, I don't know that works, because I just don't play that fast. I don't know how many people within the group right now play at that kind of speed. That's kind of tough for me.
That seems kind of quick for that kind of point level.
And I don't really know that 2.5 hours is what I go with events from now on, because and John, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we got 3 games in at any day of Lone Star Port. I think it was like 2 games at the most, maybe.
Yeah, we did the 2 major games, and then we did a late night event. So
yeah, so technically we got 3, but
yeah, and that'll depend on your venue's time availability. It's Lucas and I have been fighting with talking to venues recently about what their availabilities are, and it's nice that if you've got a store or something that you yourself can lock up, an Adepticon or something like that, like Dan runs, where you've got a 24/7 access. But
yeah,
if you're limited to 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., you've got to make sure you understand that. And dice down means dice down. We're getting kicked out here, guys. What's going on? And make sure your players know before you break for the evening, or before they break for the evening, because sometimes they'll leave before you do, that their stuff's going to be safe or not safe. Do they need to take their stuff home? Do they need to pack everything up? What happens if they leave something? God knows I've left entire everything but the army behind at Michael's event once. Everything that wasn't the army came home with dice, rule books, tape measures, everything got stayed behind. Another event, I left behind all my flyer stands. Just every one of them decided I didn't want. And I picked them up the next day, luckily, because they were still cleaning up, and it was a long drive home, so we stayed an extra night. And I got a text from an EO that allowed me to come down and pick them up. So make sure, if you're going to be an EO, you've got to go through and double check everything and clean a little bit. And everything we're going through, it sounds like a lot, and it's. I'm not saying it's not as easy as playing. It's not as easy as showing up or paying money to go to a game. It is work, but honestly, sometimes it's more fun in certain ways than it is to play a game. It's more rewarding in certain events. Like I said, I ran for 5 years. I ran games through a store when I was an employee at a hobby town. So you've got to make sure that it's something that you want to do, and it can be very rewarding if it.
So as our time has stretched out, definitely looks like we're missing the Emperor's Children. We're just gonna go ahead and put out one last call for any last words anybody would have to say to you?
Yeah, I got one thing. Someone's going to leave something behind, kind of like what John said. You're not going to find it until after you're unpacking your stuff at home. And then, this isn't my tape measure. This isn't my Primark. Rats. This isn't my entire army. And you're not going to know whose it was. And because I highly doubt you're going to find anybody who's written their name on the underside of a Primark or something like that, unless they're incredibly retentive. My suggestion is have an actual public social media thing for your event. That way, after the event's over, you can sit there and say, hey guys, attendees, tag everybody who attended, only the people who attended, and say, I found this when packing up. Is this somebody's? What would you like me to do with it if it's yours? It could be a rulebook. It could be Primarch Horus. It could be somebody's wallet or their phone. You never know. Kind of figure out what you're going to have to do with that stuff if you never figure out whose it was, or if you do figure out whose it was, how you're going to get it back to them.
I went to a hotel's Lost and Found and picked up a leather jacket and mailed it to a Indiana dude after Adepticon last year because he left his jacket at the hotel.
Do table checks. As everybody's gone, as everybody's leaving, you're going to be the last one to leave. Every table, start at one side and go to the other. Pick up every piece of terrain, turn it over. Like literally turn it over on its top. Make sure there's nothing inside of there. I can't tell you how many times I've left 2 or 3 Marines, a couple of pyroclasts. I left 5 fire drakes in a Centurion somewhere once. And the only reason I found it is because the guy who was across from me, we always do table checks, picks it up and he hears my fire drakes in there rattling around.
I had a
Check
friend who
tables.
I had a friend who based all of his scouts with cool, tall grass, and he left them in a swamp for a week. It was the hobby shop. We didn't play with that table a lot. It was one of the far end tables. And we came back the next week for an event, and literally his scouts were still there. We don't know how. No one touched them. No one messed with them. But yeah, they were still there because they had the same basing as the terrain. Blended in perfectly.
I'd say they passed the camouflage test.
Yep.
My last one, and then I'll shut up. If your venue closes at 8,
Be done at 7.
your guys need to be done at 7. If they're going to take their stuff, they need to be packed up and heading out the door at 7:30. Because you need to have a final word with the venue. You need to express your thanks. You need to give them a big hug if you're doing that. Give them a big handshake.
You need to clean up.
Yes, you need to make sure that you are leaving it as clean as you found it. If all their terrain is in bins, all of their terrain needs to be in bins. Do not leave a mess. It's a privilege, not a right. Treat it as such.
You may get people who are sitting there, like the long haulers, who are like Jack, John, and myself at the not this year's Music City Heresy, but the last one, where after everything was done, we helped clean up. If you have a lot of stuff that you need to get cleaned up, a lot of terrain to get put away, ask your players to help. You'll find that most of them will be willing to do that, especially if it'll save you time and help foster a chance to sit around and BS about the games, the game itself, people who are friends of stuff. I mean, this is a community thing. Events are things for the community. They'll help you. Let them.
And if you're injured or if you've got gamers that are injured, don't feel bad if they can't help. I've got back problems I've talked about before on here, so I can't put away tables, but I know that if I'm running an event, I can get guys to help. Or if I'm helping at an event, I just won't do the table part. It's like, hey guys, I can't do that part. I'll do anything else. You want me to put out terrain on tables? You want me to put stuff in boxes? I got you covered, but I can't pick up that big heavy thing. People are more than happy to swap around jobs, or you don't have to assume that, just because I can't do this, then I can't do all these other 12 things. If there is something along this list that you are just dead set, I can't do that. I can't talk to a store owner to get a time narrowed down, or I can't get prize support, or whatever it is. I bet there is someone in your area that says, I can't do other things. There is always someone out there to teamwork will find people that will help you out. All you've got to do is ask and put your feelers out, and they will be there, guaranteed.
Anybody else? Hearing none, I will say my last piece. If you've listened to all this, and you either were the one who asked this question, at the very least are one who has taken the responsibility of hosting an event, on behalf of your community, if nobody ever tells you this, thank you. It is a lot, and I hope that it's every bit as rooting for you as what I feel it is for me every time but thank you for taking the time to put the work in and to think of your.
And I want to throw out to add to that is if you ever attend event, feel free to give feedback. And I know for all events I run, feedback, good, bad, indifferent, is always going to make it better. And they say one of the catchphrases in leadership at work nowadays is feedback is golden, and that is the case with event runners as well. If something works, if something doesn't work, let the person running the event know. And you may not get it fixed, but at least they're going to know that didn't work or did work.
Got only one final thing to say myself.
Uh-huh.
And I'm pretty sure I speak for everyone involved in the Heresy Accountability Buddies podcast, our guest hosts who show up from time to time, and most of our community. If you need our help, if we're at an event and you are struggling because you need something done, you need help, ask me. I will help you. Ask one of our members here. We will help you. We don't mind to help, and we will happily do so, but you have to ask.
Nobody can read your mind. If you need some help and it's not visible and you're not saying, hey, stop, Jack, and you're not saying, hey, I need some help, you need to say it. Ask for help. There's no shame in it. It makes you a bigger person at the end of the day. Get the help you need, especially at an event.
And on those notes, I've been Jacob, and this episode I've been joined by
Dan,
Duncan,
Jack,
John,
Jamie.
and we're glad you've joined us. Remember, stay accountable to your hobby and your buddies, and we'll see you next time.